She's a natural producer. That one.
Got it.
Nice clapboard.
Thank you.
It's in the car.
I like it.
It's in the car.
Behind when you're walking backwards. There's all kinds of crap.
Thanks.
Yeah.
And yeah, Al's awesome. All right, and action.
That's all right. So, where are you from?
I'm from North Carolina.
And they said, they told me you're a nurse, or you were a nurse, or?
Yeah, so I've been a nurse for about 7 years, and then I decided to go into medical school, and now I'm a rising second year.
What made that, like, why the change from nurse to
Well,
doctor?
I enjoyed being a nurse. I had thought before nursing school that maybe I had wanted to go to medical school, but I didn't believe in myself, and I didn't really have any family members who were involved. And then as a nurse in the operating room, I kept seeing medical students and residents moving up further along in the ladder, and I just wondered, like, why couldn't I do that? Why is it that when something happens with a patient, you know, I'm there and I'm helping, but I always felt like I could just do more. And I thought that it would be a pity for me to just wonder for the rest of my life, why didn't I go all the way?
Did you, because in my experience, I've now seen all types of doctors and nurses. Was there an incident where you just knew that you had to, like, make the change? Did you have an epiphany, or was it over time?
I feel like for me it was over time. You know how sometimes in life there's things that stick out to you and you can't put them all together. One of the big instances for me was we were doing a lung transplant on this wonderful patient, and we were in there for about at least 15 hours, and the surgeon was amazing, our team was amazing.
15 hours.
Yeah. And we go to put the patient onto the stretcher to get ready to roll him out to recovery, and he just starts turning dusky. He starts coding. And so, you know, we're all standing there. We get into our resuscitation mode, but unfortunately he passes. And that was my first connection with being with a patient, having, you know, 15 hours with this person,
Right.
And then he's just gone. And I just kept wondering all that weekend, that month, like, what if I had known more? You know, it's like we tell ourselves that things happen for a reason, or it's an act of God, or it's just the universe. But then you wonder, well, what if I knew more? What if I knew that magical answer that could have saved that life? And I had more instances where that came up, and I just didn't want to live like that anymore. I didn't want to be comfortable in my nursing role and just wonder, well, what if I knew more? What if I could be giving back more to other people?
So this guy was a gentleman?
Uh-huh.
And 15 hours, and what happened? Why did he die?
Honestly, to this day, we still don't know. The surgery, it took a little longer than usual. It was a little difficult for his heart to compensate with such the large surgery, because he was an older gentleman, but it wasn't anything different that we had seen before. But it was interesting to me how, despite this crazy event that just happened, we were told, like, you know, it just happened, and it's just sometimes surgeries just don't go well. And so I wondered, well, but why not?
Right.
And I feel like it's always this thing that we hear, well, you know, if everything in life doesn't go as planned, and we just accept it. But we've come so far in technology, we've come so far in life, so why aren't we still asking why? Why aren't we still trying to learn? I thought medicine was a field where we continually learn for the rest of our lives. Like, I'm signing up to be a student for the rest of my life, so why is it acceptable for you to tell me or to teach me that, you know, we just have to accept that it didn't work and let's move on to the next surgery because we can't hold up the ORs? That's not a that's not a valid excuse. It's not a valid answer.
Wow. How old are you?
I'm 29.
Oh my God, you're a baby.
Thank you.
So this is what happened to me. This is why I'm in this fight now. 10 years ago, my mom, she was 69, independent, retired school teacher, house paid for, car, perfect pension. She did it, single mother, did everything perfect to make sure that she was going to be safe for the rest of her life. She was riding her bike one day. She fell, routine fall, broke her hip, went in for a routine hip surgery, and came out in a coma with permanent brain damage.
Oh my gosh.
And my uncle is a doctor, my aunt's a nurse, and I called them up and I said, I told them exactly what I just told you, and they said, no, that's not right. Get the records. So she was comatose. I became her power of attorney, and I went and got the medical records, and my uncle looked at these medical records, and within 10 minutes, he said that these are fake. These are falsified. I'm like, what? What are you talking about? He said, these surgical records, the anesthesia records, they're not truthful. They're not medically possible. Turns out my mom lost over half the blood in her body during this surgery.
Oh my goodness.
She was, the hospital didn't even notice she was in a coma for 2 days. I was the person who found her in a coma. She was transferred to an ICU, and this ICU, there was a nurse, a young nurse, 23-year-old nurse who was 6 months out of school, who was the only person with my mom that night in the intensive care unit. And my mom's blood pressure dropped repeatedly below 50 over 30 over a 4-hour period. And this nurse was just in over her head. And there was no, we asked to talk to the ICU doctor because my mom had lost over half the blood in her body. And then she's like, you know, in surgery, and then in the ICU, all these deadly blood pressures repeatedly over and over and over again. And then she never woke up, right?
Right.
So we wanted to talk to the ICU doctor, and they said, well, there was no ICU doctor
What?
in the intensive care unit. No ICU doctor. Well, that's impossible. She lost over half the blood in her body. She's in a coma. What about all these blood pressures? And they said, oh, the doctors have been replaced. The intensive care doctors have been replaced by these camera doctors out by the airport. Have you ever heard of EICU?
No. What is that?
How about this? How about this? You've never heard, you've been a nurse for 7 years?
7 years?
You're not going to be a doctor. And you've never heard of EICU, electronic ICU.
No.
That's the reason I made this movie. Because we never heard of this thing either. So electronic ICU is, in Wisconsin, the way the system is, so you've got this intensive care unit, right? And there in Wisconsin there are, there's this corporation called Aurora, and they have 15 hospitals, and they've got 15, or I think it's even 18 intensive care units, and they have one doctor out by the Milwaukee airport on a camera watching critical care patients in these intensive care units, like my mother, right? So guess how many patients they were watching on this camera?
Maybe 40?
160.
Oh, that's ridiculous.
160.
Ridiculous.
And we asked if we could talk to that doctor out by the airport, who we didn't know who this person was because there was no intensive care doctor. So let's talk to the doctor on the camera. It turns out that the camera, the camera was never on. Do you want to know why the camera was never on? Why we were told the camera was never on?
Why?
Due to patient privacy issues.
Oh, come on.
HIPAA. I swear this is true.
So then basically your mother is just sitting there going by God's grace or the universe or hopefully the nurse to save her since the doctor can't see her at all.
That is correct.
So we're just watching monitors and
That's right.
saying Hail Marys and hoping that everything works out like that. That's
right.
ridiculous.
That's right. And she didn't wake up for one full day. I was told that she was foggy, groggy due to, she had some, they told me she had lost a little bit of blood. You know, they didn't tell me she had lost over half, 2,500 cc's of blood in about 45 minutes.
In 45 minutes?
Her hemoglobins had dropped. You'll understand this. I'm finally talking to somebody who might actually understand this. Her hemoglobin went from 11.2 to 5.1.
So then my question is, what about the surgeon? Did they ever come and talk
No.
to you? How
No.
can somebody tell you, we've done surgery on your mother, all these bad things happen, or this is what somebody said that happened. Why can't you talk to the person that was there? And then how are you supposed to feel comforted in her care if there's supposed to be a camera that's watching her, but the camera isn't even on?
Yeah.
Like what sense does that make?
Well, you'll see that, and when you see the film, you'll see that the doctor, the surgeon, who was a family friend, we've known him for years, he started blaming the anesthesiologist, and then the anesthesiologist started blaming the surgeon, and then they both started blaming the primary because they'd operated her while she was still on Plavix and Lovenox and aspirin. And then they started blaming the ICU doctor who wasn't there, and the nurse who was there, and the camera doctor who was there but not on camera because the camera was off due to patient privacy. And then it was like this circular firing squad where everyone was just blaming each other. No one denied that my mom lost all that blood, and no one denied that she had permanent brain damage due to that, hypoxic encephalopathy. They just denied any involvement in it. And that's what this movie's about. We went through a 7-year trial, and I don't want to give anything away, but I'm really looking forward to you seeing this because you'll have a unique perspective as a nurse and as a new physician and as someone who has a philosophy of why you made that switch, that we can do better, that we have to do better.
We have to. There's no way that this can carry on. That's insanity for this to keep carrying on.
Yeah. Did I also hear that you wrote you wrote something?
Yes, I wrote
Tell me about that.
a reflection. So for reflections, we're supposed to write about how we feel, or necessarily what we thought of the first day. And so normally I'm a very quiet person, very introverted, but I decided during this week, I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna put it out there. I'm gonna say how I really feel, because I feel like for the past year of medical school, I've smiled, I've said everything is wonderful, I carry on, I put on the fake mask, and I feel like it's been killing me on the inside because it's not truly who I am, it's not truly how I feel. And so in my blog post, I just wrote that I was fed up, that I'm tired, and I just don't want to take it anymore. I'm tired of pretending like medicine is wonderful. Sure, there are aspects of it that's wonderful, but there's so much room for improvement, but we pretend like that room for improvement just hides in a closet somewhere. We pretend that if we make laws saying, well, residents can only work for 80 hours and that's okay, it's not like, it makes no sense for a human to be functioning for 28 hours, taking care of 30 to 40 people. I can't even take care of myself for over 24 hours of being awake. As a scrub nurse, there were times where I unfortunately was awake for 24 hours. I was right there next to the surgeons.
That's insane.
And even after, and I'm standing there, I can't go to the bathroom, I don't get any breaks. And the thing is, well, we don't have anyone. And if you leave your patient, it's patient abandonment. But if I'm standing there, I've been awake for over 24 hours, I haven't eaten, I haven't used the restroom, I have already mentally abandoned my patient, whether I'm standing here physically next to them or not. And how would you feel if that's your family member?
Right.
I'm doing the very best that I can. I put my all for my patients, but at the same time, I can be honest and say, you know what, after that 15th hour of standing there on this little red mat and barely moving my arms up to my chest because I can't break the sterile field, and I'm just rocking back and forth trying not to urinate on myself. Like, I'm not functioning at my 100%. I might not even be functioning at my 20%. I'm doing the best that I can, but wouldn't you want a system where we can easily replace people? We can act as interchangeable parts and as a team. You wouldn't want some person that you think, they think that they're God and they're almighty and they know everything, they can do everything, but they're not willing to admit that they get tired. They're not willing to admit that they're human, and they're not willing to admit that I'm trying my best, but I can also make a mistake. Like, that's crazy, it's insanity. But, as a society, we carry on, we say this is the way that we've always done it, but why? Why do we keep doing that? To make some old guys out here happy that they, were the good old boys and they did it the way that everyone was supposed to do it, and now the newcomers are like, oh, well, we're weak. We admit that we make mistakes. We admit that we need help, but aren't we taught in school?
That's not a weakness.
Thank you. I'm like, aren't we taught in
strength.
school that it's a strength to admit the things that you don't know? And you gain far more wisdom from learning what you don't know and not pretending like you know everything, because that's where mistakes are made.
Right, and you learn from your mistakes.
Exactly.
I went through this entire experience. I can't wait to talk to you about the film after you see it, because You have just an incredible perspective that this is going to be the first time I've seen this film. It's on HBO, and I've seen this film now with all kinds of audiences. Film fest audiences, normal people, lay people, patients. But I've never seen this movie with medical people, with nurses and doctors. And I can't wait because a lot of people think this film is like anti-medicine, anti-doctor. No, this is a love letter to people like you, the future. Like you, everything you just said, that's where we have to go. We actually don't have to go. We need to go there. And my mom is, you know, she survived, not well, but people die every day due to these kinds of things. And unless the attitudes change and the perspectives change, and people like you who step up, who write your statement about how you really feel, like what patient family, if they heard what you just said, who out there is going to go, that's a bad thing? No. What she's right. You know, what you're being taught, you know, the weakness and all that stuff, that's crazy.
It's crazy.
And the more people that hear that, I didn't know this. I thought I was just making a personal story about my mother. It turns out it's a universal thing. And I've heard from thousands of doctors and nurses who have seen this film. I've never actually seen it in the same room. That's happening today, so I can't wait for that. But I keep hearing from doctors and nurses saying, you just told the truth, and thank you for telling it. Keep telling it, because we need to hear it.
We do.
And it's even worse than you think. And like the story you just told me, like you can't even go to the bathroom. Mm-hmm. What the hell is wrong with that? That is like, what is this, military boot camp?
So it feels sometimes. You know, you go in and you're taught that you follow what the surgeons say, and some surgeons are wonderful, but then you get the ones who aren't so wonderful. Then you get the ones who are used to a certain team. No one else can come in, no one else can be taught, and so then you're stuck there. Or you're on call. I used to be on call 7/24. Meaning I could get called in Monday morning and I could be stuck there all the way until Tuesday afternoon if it was a holiday. And I'm not having lunch, I'm not going to the bathroom, and it's normal and that culture. And so their excuse is, well, we don't have anyone else specialized for cardiac, so we can't break you out because only you know how to help the surgeon get the patient on bypass. No one else is prepared. And then when we go to hire people, we went up to the ranks and we tried to get more funding. And they tell us that, well, scrub nurses and OR nurses function in a way of a mechanic, because really we're not using our brains to do anything. We're just pieces to the puzzle, so that they use this mechanic model of how we should pay people. So of course then nobody wants to get paid $15, $20 an hour to stand there and be miserable, catching arthritis and all kinds of stuff, you know, unless your heart is truly in it. And I remember when I first started as a OR nurse and I wanted to do cardiac, and everyone told me, no, don't do it, you know, it's so labor intensive, but it was something in it that I loved. I loved our patients. I love seeing somebody who is just sitting there with heart failure. We put a brand new heart in there, and then, you know, you hear a couple of days later, oh, they're in the ICU, they're doing great, their family, you know, they're walking, doing all these laps around the, all around the unit, you know, and it was so invigorating. And so I did it because I loved it, and I did it because the surgeons that we had, they invested in me. And it's like I'm torn, because I go into medicine because I looked up to the surgeons that we had, but I hated the system that we had. The system didn't support the nurses, the system didn't support the surgeons, and definitely the system did not support the patients. It just makes it feel like it's a money game, and as many cases as we can get done, as many people as we can keep alive in the units, and make it seem like everything is wonderful, the more money goes into the bonus checks of the VPs. But where are the VPs of these hospitals when something drastic or something bad happens to everyone, to the patients, to the nurses, to the doctors? Then they just magically slide away. And it's ridiculous, because we go into healthcare to help people, not to hurt people. So why are we letting people get hurt but we're more focused on putting money into a hospital. We're more focused in making all these research programs and all this research crap to come up with a medication that's supposed to save a life. But yet you could care less if you don't set up a system wherein if someone gets a double dose of this medication, we can stop it before it happens. We don't care. As long as we can make this medication, we can be the first ones to do it, and we can be a wonderful hospital on the top list. That's all that really matters. Why? That's ridiculous. So are you telling a lie to everyone that you care about humans, that you want to be in medicine to help people? Or are you really in this just to get as much money as you can, work 10, 15 years, and get out? Like, what's the truth here?
Well, if you're the future of medicine, we're in good shape.
Oh, thank you so
Yeah,
much.
no, seriously.
And I'm so sorry that all this happened to
It's
you.
all right. I'm so thrilled that you're doing what you're doing.
Thank you.
I mean, you are. People like me will be able to sleep at night knowing that there are people like you who really care, like really care about not just certainly the patient, but the systemic changes that need to happen. You know, people need to hear from you.
Oh,
You know, I
thank
think you got. I wish you the very best on what you're doing. What school are you going to?
UNT.
Yeah, you're already making changes,
Thank you.
right? It's already happened, and you're 29. I mean, that's the best news I've heard in a very long time. Seriously, thank you.
No, thank you. Thank you
No,
for bringing all this to light. I can't
No.
imagine the courage that it took for you to be able to not only go through this terrible event with your family, you know, when you feel like this is the person that I'm supposed to keep safe.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's big.
Oh my God.